Good morning. Today we will be discussing about floating and fixed exchange rate regime. In the earlier section 3 and 4, we discussed about various exchange rate system where exchange rate determination process we discuss, and in the sections 5 and 6 we will be discussing the exchange rate regime. Here we will be discussing about exchange rate floating and fixed exchange rate basket system, and also exchange rate currency board system. Let us start with the exchange rate regime, fixed and floating exchange rate. Exchange rate determination primarily influenced by the type of exchange rate regime a country has adopted, because every country has different exchange rate system. Exchange rate influence the fiscal, monetary and other economic policy, because on the basis of exchange rate the country's domestic money supply, interest rate, fiscal policy, monetary policy depends. So, fiscal and monetary policy and other economic policy are quite responsive to change in exchange rate. Hence, always country wanted to have an exchange rate regime which is suitable for their economic policy. In this module, we will be discussing about briefly the various exchange rate regime, the advantages of free and fixed exchange rate regime, pros and cons of managed and floating exchange rate regime. As I mentioned that free and fixed exchange rate, these are two extreme. On these two extreme, many exchange rate system can possible. Here fixed and floating, free floating or completely fixed is a rare case. Many countries adopted in between some policy where they primarily fixed exchange rate for short term and try to maintain the exchange rate in the long run. So, let us discuss with the foreign exchange rate regime, where exchange rate regime is a way the country manage its currency in respect to foreign currency and the foreign exchange rate market. Exchange regime is the method that is employed by the government in order to administer their respective currency in context of other major currency of the country of the world, because the foreign currency influence the international trade, the capital flow, the investment activity in the country. So, country always try to have a exchange rate regime which is suitable for their domestic policy. Domestic foreign exchange market and the exchange rate regimes are linked to monetary policy. Monetary policy, as you know, monetary policy primarily divides to monitor the inflation, interest rate and money supply. There are intricacies are there among these three variables, that is money supply, exchange rate, interest rate and the domestic inflation. So, always country wanted to have a exchange rate regime which is suitable for their domestic interest rate, domestic money supply and also the domestic inflation, control of inflation. So, fixed and floating are the two extremes, and in between these two many combination of exchange rate regime can be possible, which may be partly fixed and partly floating. When we analyze exchange rate, fixed and floating, as I mentioned, these are the two extreme, and country always try to avoid these two extreme and try to have exchange rate which is suitable for their monetary and fiscal policy. So, exchange rate regime, fixed and floating, theoretically in between fixed and floating many exchange rate regime can be possible. Fully fixed exchange rate regime, managed floating exchange rate regime, free floating exchange rate, monetary union with other country, currency board system, currency basket system. So, the fully fixed and freely floating, these are extreme. In between the managed floating means there is a floating rate and country try to adhere to the exchange rate, and monetary union with other country means here currency basket and currency union possibilities are there. Currency basket means a country have a basket of foreign currency and try to maintain a domestic currency linked to this basket currency. Currency board also similarly currency basket type country, and however, if you see countries practices, generally very big country in the sense that economy, that export imports are quite impressive. This country generally practice what is called a managed floating exchange rate regime. Small country that depends upon their export, because they generally practice what is called a monetary union, that a currency board system or currency basket system. In this section, we will be discussing floating exchange rate regime, their advantages, their disadvantages, and also whether a country should practice this floating exchange rate regime. We will discuss about that. Under fixed exchange rate system, the government or the central bank maintain fixed rate for domestic currency. Domestic currency, they try to maintain the international value of the domestic currency linked to a fixed rate. The fixed rate means here the country, the central bank of the country generally administer the exchange rate, practice a fixed rate which may be short run or may be a medium run, medium time period. They try to fix the exchange rate and try to adhere this exchange rate through the purchase of and buy and sales of foreign currency. However, always the government or the central bank try to intervene in the foreign exchange market, particularly to maintain the fixed exchange rate. There is a target exchange rate, the central bank decide to maintain it. On the to maintain the close link between the decided exchange rate, always the central bank try to intervene in the foreign exchange market by selling foreign currency assets, foreign currency or directly currency in the market. And when the country there is a decline or the target exchange rate is less than the actual exchange rate, the central bank try to purchase the foreign currency. When there is a deficit, a target exchange rate is lower than the actual exchange rate, always country try to sell the foreign currency to maintain the exchange rate. However, there are many advantages, many disadvantages are there in fixed exchange rate. The primary advantages are commitment to a single fixed exchange rate encourages international trade by making prices of goods involved in trade more predictable. Since exchange rate is fixed, the exporter importer try to adjust their balance sheet or try to export or import at particular rate. So, there is no fluctuation in the exchange rate. So, it is commitment of the central bank to fix a single exchange rate to encourage export import, because when the exchange rate is fixed, the risk of appreciation or depreciation of domestic currency is not there. This actually encourages what is called the export import or international trade. Fixed exchange rate is a part of more general argument for national economic policy conducive to international economic integration. Fixed exchange rate, generally central bank or different countries practice to integrate their economy with the world economy. Fixed exchange rate sometimes help international economic integration, because the fluctuation of exchange rate, the volatility in the exchange rate create international risks which may hamper the international integration. For that reason, always central bank of different countries try to maintain a fixed exchange rate which generally help in integrating the domestic economy with the world economic system. Since uncertainty and risks of exchange rate volatility is rare in case of fixed exchange rate, it promote long run capital flow. The capital flow may be in the form of foreign direct investment, may be in the form of foreign institutional investment, generally comes to a country when there is a uncertainty or the risk is not there, because uncertainty and risks create exchange rate volatility and lead to flight of foreign currency. And to improve the capital inflow to the domestic economy, always this uncertainty or risks of foreign exchange rate volatility should be reduced. And a fixed exchange rate, there is no volatility, there is no uncertainty, and hence it promote the capital inflow to domestic economy. There is no fear of currency fluctuation and speculation. Fixed exchange rate, there is no, because exchange rate is constant, exchange rate is fixed, the currency fluctuation or the currency speculations is not there, because in a floating exchange rate the value of the currency change or value of the currency depreciation or appreciation always there. This appreciation generally linked to the speculation. Speculator in the market generally buy and purchase foreign currency, take position in the foreign currency market to get advantage of what is called the appreciation or depreciation of foreign currency. In case of fixed exchange rate, such kind of appreciation depreciation is not there, hence the speculation uncertainty is not there, and hence it promote the capital inflow to domestic economy. So, fixed exchange rate advantages are there, the advantages of what is called the promotion of international trade, enhancement of international economic integration, and capital inflow, because uncertainty and risks are not there in case of fixed exchange rate. There are many other advantages are also there. Fixed exchange rate create confidence and strength in the domestic currency, and there is no fear of adverse effect of speculation on the exchange rate, because since exchange rate is fixed, there is no speculation, there is no uncertainty, it creates confidence on domestic currency, because the value of the domestic currency remain constant since there is a fixed exchange rate. For creating a confidence in the economy, we generally many countries practice what is called fixed exchange rate. Fixed exchange rate serve as an anchor and imposes a discipline on monetary authority to follow a responsible financial policy within the country, because on the basis of exchange rate the domestic inflation, domestic interest rate, domestic economic money supply depends. And since the country practicing a fixed exchange rate, it creates a anchor, a discipline on the monetary authority to maintain the low level inflation, maintain stability in interest rate, stability in monetary policy. So, because only then the exchange rate can be fixed. If there is interest rate volatility, if there is inflation, if there is excess money supply in the economy, the fixed exchange rate practice is not possible. Because of this reason, the fixed exchange rate provides a extra force on domestic monetary authority to practice a disciplined monetary policy, where they have to maintain a low level inflation, stability in the money supply, and also stability in interest rate rate. However, any inflationary monetary expenditure create balance of payment deficit. When there is balance of payment deficit, there should be there is very difficult on the part of monetary authority to maintain a fixed exchange rate, because the deficit balance of payment lead to depreciation of domestic currency. When there is depreciation of domestic currency, the monetary authority has to intervene in the foreign exchange market by selling foreign currency. They have to maintain a exchange rate reserve to practice a fixed exchange rate policy, because in a depreciation or appreciation of foreign domestic currency leads to volatility in exchange rate, and hence to maintain a target exchange rate or a fixed exchange rate, it is essential on the part of the monetary authority to practice a disciplinary monetary policy, where they have to remove any inflationary bias and also any interest rate volatility. So, fixed exchange rate provide a disciplinary monetary policy. Other advantages are there in the fixed exchange rate. The exchange rate was like in case of fixed exchange rate, the monetary authority has a severe strain to maintain what is called a stable exchange rate regime, because they have to regularly intervene in the foreign currency market to maintain stability in the exchange rate system. So, it is very difficult on the part of monetary authority to maintain a fixed exchange rate, because they need to intervene in the foreign currency market every moment. As you know, foreign currency market is a highly volatile market, it is highly liquid market, and the turnover in foreign currency market is quite high. Any kind of expectation, any kind of imbalance in foreign balance of payment, it lead to depreciation, appreciation of foreign currency. And for that reason, every time the monetary authority, the central bank should vigil in foreign currency market to maintain stability in exchange rate system. To maintain stability in exchange rate system, they need a huge amount of foreign currency reserve in the form of foreign currency asset, which allow them to intervene in the foreign currency market to maintain the fixed exchange rate. Let us discuss about the disadvantages of a fixed exchange rate. As I mentioned, there are many advantages of fixed exchange rate. At the same time, there are many disadvantages of fixed exchange rate. Fixed exchange rate may achieve exchange rate stability, but at the expense of domestic stability, because to maintain a fixed exchange rate, what you need? We need control on money supply, we need a control in interest rate, we need a control inflationary regime, and all this possible only you have a curtail our domestic economic activity, because when you do not supply excess money in the economy, there may not be liquidity, and there is no liquidity, the domestic economic expansion will suffer. So, to maintain a low level inflation, you have to have a interest rate, we have to have a money supply, which we have to sacrifice for maintaining external stability of the currency. So, we have to achieve a stability in external value of the currency by sacrificing the domestic economic activity. So, domestic stability generally suffer because to maintain external stability of the economy. Monetary authority also lose their independence of monetary policy formulation to maintain exchange rate stability, because domestic monetary authority generally requires to monitor the economy a independence in formulation of monetary policy, because to maintain a independence in monetary policy, it is essential that it is not possible to control the exchange rate, money supply, and at the same time interest rate continuously to maintain a stability in exchange rate, because these three are interdependent, and there is what is called a dilemma of trinity. There is economic logic is that it is very difficult to control a fixed exchange rate, a interest rate, and at the same time a stability in money supply, because these three are interdependent, and you can only control two at a particular time period, you cannot control all three. So, it is very difficult to maintain stability in external value of the currency by having a independent monetary policy. Monetary policy, the monetary authority practice, they need freedom in formulating what is called interest rate regime, in formulating money supply policy, because to maintain a fixed exchange regime, the monetary authority cannot have freedom in deciding what should be the minimum requirement of money supply, what should be the interest rate structure in the economy, and for this they have to sacrifice the fixed exchange rate. So, fixed exchange rate does not allow to practice a independent monetary policy. Any instability in exchange rate need to be corrected by buying selling of foreign exchange reserve or by controlling the domestic money supply. Because when you want to maintain stability in exchange rate, the monetary authority need to interfere in the domestic market by in the form of continuously buying and selling foreign assets. So, they have to maintain a excessive reserve which allow them to control the exchange rate any moment, because whenever they are interfering in the foreign exchange market, there is they are controlling what is called a domestic money supply in the economy. They have to sacrifice the independence of formulating monetary policy, and they have to intervene in the foreign currency market every moment to maintain a stability in exchange rate. Monetary authority sacrifice the objective of monetary policy to protect a fixed exchange rate, because the objective of monetary policy to control inflation and through a responsive monetary policy. The responsive monetary policy allow them to decide what should be the level of money supply in the economy, what should be the structure of interest rate. If they decide these two and try to maintain these two, they cannot control the fixed exchange rate. So, fixed exchange rate or the stability in exchange rate market requires the monetary authority should not protect the domestic economy, because they have to sacrifice the domestic economy or stability of the domestic economy to practice a fixed exchange rate. The other disadvantages are there. To protect the fixed exchange rate, country needs to have a significant foreign exchange reserve, and this imposes heavy burden on monetary authority for managing exchange rate reserve, because to protect the exchange rate or the targeted exchange rate, the central bank or the monetary authority need to interfere in the foreign currency market every moment, because foreign currency market is highly liquid market, and in every moment there is appreciation and depreciation of domestic currency. To protect the exchange rate, the monetary authority need to interfere in the foreign currency market by buying and selling of foreign currency assets. When they want to buy and sell foreign currency asset, they have to have significant exchange rate reserve. So, the exchange rate reserve has a own cost. Maintaining a exchange rate reserve, there is a cost on the part of monetary authority. So, the monetary authority need to have a huge amount of reserve to control the fixed exchange rate. So, there is a cost of maintaining fixed exchange rate. This cost is not only monetary cost, not only the policy formulation cost, at the same time the cost of keeping a huge amount of foreign currency reserve. Fixed exchange rate system need a complicated exchange control mechanism, which may lead to misallocation of resources, because we are practicing fixed exchange rate means you are not allowing the market determination of exchange rate regime, means market forces are not there deciding what should be the value of the actual value of the domestic currency, and this may lead to misallocation of resources, because the misallocation of resources are there because the monetary authority intervening in foreign currency market every moment to keep foreign currency rate constant, and there are many sources of utilization of foreign currency assets are there, but these assets are being sacrificed to maintain fixed exchange rate regime. So, we need exchange control mechanism. The exchange control mechanism may be in the form of export control, import control, free control on free movement of capital, control on what is called a balance of payment regime. So, these are requirements to practice a fixed exchange rate, and this lead to misallocation of resources. So, it is very difficult to practice what is called a fixed exchange rate regime, because there are many advantages are there, no doubt. At the same time, disadvantages are more, because disadvantages in the form of surrendering the domestic monetary policy and and implementing a monetary policy which may not be suitable for domestic economy. So, no countries in the world have have fixed exchange rate regime at present. Fixed exchange rate regime is rarely practiced by any country at present. Almost all countries at present have adopted some forms of flexible exchange rate policy, where the fixed exchange rate regime is practiced in the form of a targeting exchange rate, which may not be a official exchange rate. The market forces decide the exchange rate. At the same time, the monetary authority try to maintain an exchange rate which is suitable for their domestic economy, and always try to maintain this exchange rate by continuously buying and selling or through policy intervention in exchange rate market. But monetary authority never decide what should be the fixed exchange rate for the country. Let us discuss what is called floating exchange rate regime. If you see the floating exchange rate system, as I mentioned earlier, the floating exchange rate system, the market forces decide the exchange rate. The market forces here, the market forces of supply and demand of foreign currency. Each currency has its own demand and own supply process, and the demand and supply of currency decide the exchange rate or the value of the currency in the international market. With the floating exchange rate, changes in market demand and supply decide the exchange rate value. The monetary authority never try to adopt any fixed exchange rate, never try to decide what should be the ideal exchange rate for the country, never try to interfere in addressing or try to maintain a target value of a domestic currency. They allow the market forces to decide the exchange rate value. So, a rise in the demand for US dollar lead to appreciation of market value, an increase in currency supply which puts downwards pressure on the market value of the exchange rate. Here we will discuss when there is free demand, free market forces are there in the form of supply and demand side, how they decide the exchange rate. Whenever there is a more demand, what should be the exchange rate? Whenever there is more supply, what should be the exchange rate? In the free market rate, freely floating exchange rate system, the freely exchanged system, it is the demand and supply in the real market decide the exchange rate value. If you see the diagram, here y axis we have the rate of change of foreign currency, in the x axis we have quantity supply and quantity demand. The exchange rate is a y axis and x axis we have quantity supply of quantity supply of that is called exchange or the foreign currency. Here you see that D1 and D1 and D2 are the demand of foreign currency and S1 is the supply of foreign currency. With the increasing supply of foreign currency, the exchange rate appreciated. When an economy receives more foreign currency, the foreign currency domestic value of currency appreciate. When there is more supply of the US dollar in Indian economy, Indian rupee will appreciate. When there is so for that reason S1, that is supply of foreign currency, upward sloping. When there is more demand of foreign currency, rupee will depreciate. So, then D1 or D2, the demand curve is downward sloping. In the initial period, when demand is D1, supply is S1, demand is D1 and supply is S1, the exchange rate decide at particular level. The exchange rate decide at this point. With the demand of more dollars or more foreign currency, supply remain constant, the demand curve shift from D1 to D2, that is upward shift will be there, upward parallel shift is there. At this point, that since there is more demand of foreign currency, the foreign currency appreciate against the domestic value and this exchange rate the equilibrium take place at a higher level. So, similarly, if you see the shift in supply, demand remain constant, there is shift in supply. Here demand is D1, supply is H1, the rate of exchange rate determined at this level exchange rate decide, and when supply is increasing, when there is more supply of foreign currency in the domestic economy, the supply curve shift leftward toward the x axis, there is a parallel shift downward shift, there is parallel downward shift, new supply curve is H2 with the more supply of foreign currency. The quantity increases, hence there is more supply of foreign currency, a domestic value of foreign currency depreciate, as domestic value of money depreciate, a new equilibrium take place at here. Earlier equilibrium was here, the new equilibrium take place here. Suppose there is at the same time there is a parallel, there is a more demand in the foreign currency market. So, with the more demand, D1 shift rightward towards parallel shift rightward, and at the new demand curve, new supply curve H2 and new demand curve D2, that equilibrium take place here. If the supply remain constant, demand increase with the old supply curve here, then the equilibrium take place here. The both supply and demand together increase, then there is a new demand curve, new supply curve, we have H2 and D2. So, here equilibrium take place here. So, what does it mean? It means that whenever with the increase in demand of foreign currency, if supply remain constant, there is appreciation of value of foreign currency, there is depreciation value of the domestic currency. And if there is a more supply of foreign currency, demand remain constant, domestic value of the currency will appreciate, and there will be appreciation in domestic value of currency in international market. However, if the supply and demand together increase, we have a new equilibrium point. The new equilibrium point may appreciate, depreciate, depends upon the level of demand and level of supply. If the level of demand is more, then at the new equilibrium, the domestic value of currency may depreciate. If the level of supply is more than demand, at the new equilibrium, domestic value of currency appreciate. So, if you interpret in a different way, when there is a market force, when market forces decide the value of the currency, the demand and supply forces decide the value of the currency in actual market, then the process of determination depends upon the strength of demand and strength of supply. That actually the shift in demand curve, shift in supply curve reflect here. Let us understand what are the under the fixed exchange rate system, under the floating exchange rate system, what are the advantages are there, what are the disadvantages are there. The value of currency is determined by market demand and for supply, and market demand and supply. The trade flow and capital flow are the main factor affecting the exchange rate. The currency, when the free floating is there, the demand in foreign currency arise because the importers, those who are importing goods and services from foreign country, then demand foreign currency. Those who are supposed to pay liability in the form of foreign currency, they also demand foreign currency. At the same time, there is a flow of foreign currency is there in the form of export, also in the form of other trade flows are there, other than trade flows are there. So, the trade requirements and the capital flow decide the exchange rate, or decide the value of the currency under free floating regime. Under free floating regime, there is no predetermined exchange rate on the part of monetary authority. monetary authority never decide any exchange rate. It is the market forces which decide the exchange rate or the value of the domestic currency. However, it does not mean that central bank never interfere in foreign currency market under free floating regime, because it is free floating or fixed regime. The central bank always interfere in the domestic foreign currency market, because they want to avoid excessive fluctuation in foreign currency, because the excessive fluctuation in foreign currency affect the international trade. So, in case of fixed exchange rate regime, the monetary authority intervene every moment to maintain a fixed exchange rate. In case of free floating regime, the monetary authority intervene regularly, not every moment, to so as to arrest any kind of excessive volatility in free floating regime. Because as I mentioned, there are many factors which affect the exchange rate, and there are many ways exchange rate also affect the domestic monetary policy or domestic economic policy, because excessive floating affects hamper the international trade, at the same time fixed exchange rate hamper the domestic monetary policy. So, we have to understand that neither we want a fixed exchange rate nor we want a free floating exchange rate. Always monetary authority wants a exchange rate which is suitable for their economic policy. So, exchange rate also influenced by many macroeconomic factors like performance of the economy, technological development, productivity and competitiveness, which generally drive the value of the currency. No doubt macroeconomic factors are short run, maybe in the long run also. Performance of the economy, technological development, productivity, competitiveness, these are the long run parameters. So, in the long run, it is the performance of the economy that decides the exchange rate in a market economy. In a short run, it is the trade flow or the flow of foreign currency decide the exchange rate. So, what do you want? Neither you want a freely floating exchange rate nor you want a fixed exchange rate, because these two are extreme. They have number of advantages and disadvantages. You want a stable economic policy or a free and exchange rate system which help our domestic economy. So, always if you see the real world there is a practice of managed floating rather than free floating exchange rate. In the managed floating exchange rate, there is a target region. The target region decided by the monetary authority, what is called target exchange rate. However, in the real market the central bank and the monetary authority never decide or never tell what is the target exchange rate. Under the managed floating exchange rate regime, in place of every moment intervention in foreign currency market, the monetary authority regularly intervene in foreign currency market to arrest any kind of excessive volatility in foreign currency. So, under managed floating exchange rate regime, though exchange rate is determined by the market forces, the central bank or the government sets some kind of target exchange rate to protect their export import. As I mentioned, we are not practicing fixed exchange rate. At the same time, we are not practicing what is called free floating exchange rate. What you are practicing? A managed floating exchange rate. Under the managed floating exchange rate system, the demand and supply of foreign currency decide the exchange rate. However, the monetary authority or the central bank always practice a target exchange rate. A target exchange rate which promote their export import. A target exchange rate is a rate which promote capital inflow to the domestic economy. So, always the monetary authority tried to intervene in the money exchange rate market when the exchange rate beyond exchange rate appreciate or depreciate beyond a limit, which the limit set by the monetary authority, the limit is set on the basis of a regime which should not hamper the export and import. So, central bank thus regularly intervene in the monetary foreign exchange market to prevent any kind of excessive volatility or diversion from the target exchange rate, because the target exchange is a rate which promote international trade, which promote capital inflow to the domestic economy, a rate which allow the monetary authority to practice a independent monetary policy, which allow the monetary authority to frame domestic macroeconomic policy which is good for the country or which is suitable for the country. So, they do not want exchange rate, let it be decided by the market forces beyond a target, beyond the target region. If the exchange rate appreciate or depreciate beyond the target region, target rate or target region, the monetary authority intervene in the foreign currency market by in the form of selling or purchasing foreign currency to prevent the exchange rate to go beyond the limit. Currency can move between the permitted band of fluctuation. The monetary authority allow the foreign currency to fluctuate on a particular limit. The limits or the band of fluctuation decided by monetary authority, and the monetary authority never disclose this to market forces. At the same time, the interest rate, money supply and foreign direct investment, foreign institutional investment, all these policy are framed on the basis of a target exchange rate. They frame a target exchange rate which allow the monetary authority to have a policy of interest rate, have a policy of money supply, have a policy of foreign institutional investment, foreign direct investment which is good for the country. So, while deciding the exchange rate or target exchange rate, the monetary authority take into account the macroeconomic parameters which are suitable for the country. So, target exchange rate decided by the monetary authority. At the same time, monetary authority allow the exchange rate to be determined by the market forces on the basis of demand and supply of foreign currency. So, what are the advantages of floating exchange rate? There are many. The fluctuation in the exchange rate can provide a automatic adjustment for country with large balance of payment deficit, because in case of floating exchange rate, the market forces decide or correct the adjustment in macro balance of payment. Balance of payment may be having a deficit, may be having a surplus. When there is a deficit balance of payment, domestic currency depreciate. When domestic currency depreciate, it creates incentive for export, and there will be more export, and there is more flow of foreign currency to the economy, and this automatically correct the deficit balance of payment. When there is a surplus balance of payment, the domestic currency appreciate, which create disincentive for export, and export curtail, foreign capital, foreign inflow in the form of trade, in the form of export reduces, and surplus balance of payment automatically corrected. So, thus in an economy, if an economy has a large deficit, there is a net outflow of foreign currency. This put downward pressure on the exchange rate, and if a depreciation occurs, the relative price of export in overseas market falls, while the relative price of import in home market goes up. This leads to reduce the overall deficit in the balance of trade, and provided that the price elasticity of demand of export import and price elasticity of import is sufficiently high. the export import has price elasticity. If they are more elastic, then any depreciation appreciation of foreign currency, appreciation of foreign currency automatically correct the deficit or surplus balance of payment. Floating exchange rate gives the government or the monetary authority flexibility in determining the interest rate. At the same time, it keeps the value of currency to fluctuate under a limit. The limit is determined by the monetary authority. So, flexible exchange rate or the managed floating exchange rate is the ideal exchange rate to be practiced in real economic world. So, what are the advantages of floating exchange rate? Further, the balance of payment on account of disequilibrium automatically corrected, restored to a because of floating exchange rate regime. Balance of payment adjustment is smoother because the market forces correct the balance of payment deficit or surplus. Autonomy of monetary authority preserves because monetary authority get the autonomy in deciding the monetary policy, in deciding the level of inflation, level of interest rate, level of money supply in the economy. At the same time, they also have the freedom in intervening in foreign currency market. So, the fundamental argument in favor of floating exchange rate system is that it allows countries autonomy with respect to their use of monetary, fiscal and other policy instrument, and at the same time external equilibrium is ensured because of flexible exchange rate regime. But there are many economists, many international finance experts, they have negative argument against the floating exchange rate regime. The market forces, because under the floating exchange rate regime we are surrendering the process of adjustment of foreign currency to market forces. Market forces may not always correct or fail to decide what is the actual exchange rate. It may happen, it may allow uncertainty, it may allow speculator to decide the exchange rate, the value of the foreign currency or the exchange rate in the international market. Government may intervene, but intervention in foreign currency market also required government or the central bank should also have a some kind of foreign exchange reserve, which generally have a cost aspect. Whenever there is a intervention in foreign currency market, some extent the freedom in monetary policy formulation, fiscal policy formulation is affected. Excessive volatility or uncertainty in foreign currency market because of floating exchange rate regime, though it is managed floating, also generate what is called some kind of negative in the international trade aspect. A depreciating currency, if the currency is depreciating, the market forces, a speculator create such kind of environment, it leads to further depreciation of the currency. And generally it create some kind of pressure on the part of importer to postpone the import, and also some kind of pressure on the part of exporter to postpone the export, because depreciation create further environment of depreciation which hamper the value of the domestic currency. However, we can conclude there neither rigidly fixed not freely floating exchange rate system are desirable for the economy. Thus, we need a system of managed floating exchange rate, where there is a freedom on the part of monetary authority to intervene in the market whenever there is requirement. The central bank have been trying to control fluctuation of exchange rate around some narrow band. However, the demand and supply forces determine the exchange rate in a which is good for the country. Thus, neither you want a fixed exchange rate nor you want a completely or freely floating exchange rate. What do you want? A managed floating exchange rate where the market forces decide the exchange rate. At the same time, central bank had the freedom in intervening the foreign exchange market and deciding the rate which is good for the country, where they are the same time they enjoy in deciding the monetary policy, exchange rate policy and fiscal policy which is good for the country. With this, let us conclude the section 5. Let us come to the references are here. We can go through the references and let us discuss some model questions. The model questions are here. Write in brief the pros and cons of fixed and completely flexible exchange rate regime. Here you discuss various advantages and disadvantages of fixed and floating exchange rate regime and bring out what is the requirement for a country at present, whether you need fixed, whether you need floating, whether you need a free and floating in between what is called a managed floating exchange rate system. Second, how the managed floating exchange rate regime overcome the difficulty of completely flexible exchange rate regime. Here you discuss first what is the meaning of managed floating, what is the meaning of completely flexible exchange rate regime. Bring out, you have to discuss here what is the disadvantage of flexible exchange rate regime, completely flexible exchange rate regime, and also try to discuss what are the advantages of managed floating exchange rate regime, which are the difficulty in completely flexible exchange rate regime can be overcome through the managed floating exchange rate regime. You have to outline that. In the third question, we briefly outline the historical development of exchange rate regime in case of India. Here you have to discuss about the exchange rate market development in case of India. After the independence, how the exchange rate regime was during the time of independence, what is the exchange rate regime in case of India, how the exchange rate that is rupee linked to the pound sterling. In early 80s, rupee was de-linked from the pound sterling. Later part of 80s, we started a foreign exchange market. In early 19, we faced severe balance of payment crisis, and Government of India, the central bank forced to abandon the fixed exchange rate regime. They allow the rupee to fluctuate to the market forces, let the market forces of demand and supply decide the exchange rate of rupee. At the same time, they practice over the period the exchange rate market was liberalized. At present, we have what is called a current account convertibility, and some extent significant extent we have liberalization in capital account. Our trades, that is export, import, our payment inflow, outflow of foreign currency on the current account decided by the market forces. In case of capital account, that is the purchase of gold, purchase of coming of foreign currency asset, purchase of foreign currency asset, these are decided by the Government of India through the process of exchange rate control regime. These are the historical development you decide. In case of India, we can go through the RBI report or foreign currency market, that will give you sufficient guideline or sufficient information to you to discuss the historical development of exchange rate regime in case of India. Thank you.